Hi, this is Richard Warren. I'm at Alexandra Palace in London at the Classic Motor Show, where we should be looking at some classic cars in the next few minutes. Well, I have with me the Practical Classics editor, John Pearson, and obviously the show is sponsored by Practical Classics. John, would you like to tell me a little bit about the cars we've got here on the stand with you today?
Well, actually, the cars on the stand, we've got a Mini Cooper S, which we've restored ourselves in the magazine as a series. It's being run over a year. Show people how to do it, and then hopefully they'll move on and do the restorations themselves. The other car we've got is this Jaguar Mark II 3.4, which is a reader's car. We featured it in the magazine 2 or 3 issues ago, Practical Classics. The reader took 10 years to restore it from basically a heap of rust with the engine on the back seat, in very, very poor condition indeed.
Any idea how much money he's actually spent in those 10 years?
I don't think he's added it up, and I don't think that he would want to. I know that he was offered £30,000 yesterday for it and turned it down, so someone thought he'd done a very good job. We do too. The other car we've got is my own car. It's a Triumph TR7, which we've, over the last 2 or 3 months, we've fitted a V8 engine into to give it a lot more power, and that's also been featured in the magazine. And there's a lot of interest being shown in that. People just interested in improving the TR7, which has had a bit of a poor press really over the years, but there's sort of growing interest in that now, and a lot of people fit bigger engines into them, make it into a really good car.
Yes, because it used to amaze me. Obviously, you read in other magazines as well about certain what you would call classic cars, which have sort of inherent problems with engines and electrical problems, and people still restore them. Is there any sort of reason for that, do you think, or is it just because they're slightly sadists and they just want to spend hours working on the car by the side of the road?
I think I'd have to disagree. I don't think classic cars are unreliable. I think any car, if it's not maintained properly, will let you down, but I think a well-maintained classic is as good as anything else. Classic car restoration is, for a lot of people, it's a way of recreating their youth, those sort of wonderful days of their younger years. They either buy the cars that they used to own themselves or the cars they aspired to. It can be a Jaguar like this or an E-Type or whatever, and they find themselves with a little bit of cash, buy a restoration project fairly cheaply, and eventually, it does take a long time, but eventually build themselves a really good car to drive.
So if there's anybody out there thinking or just speculating about going to buy a practical car or a classic car, what sort of advice could you give them?
Well, buy the best that you can afford. There's no point in buying a heap of rubbish that's going to sit in your garage for a long time if initially at least you haven't got the expertise to repair it. The second thing is, try and get an expert to go along with you to help you buy it. There are lots and lots of classic car clubs. If people contact us at the magazine, we'll point them in the direction of the club specialist. Get someone who really knows the cars to go along with you and help you buy it, and you'll have a lot of enjoyable motoring.
Classic cars come in all shapes and sizes, and some of the unusual ones we've seen here today are V8 Ford Pilots. The one behind us is actually a Manchester police car, or was a Manchester police car, and Ian Herbert can now tell us a little bit about its history. Ian?
Yes, as you quite rightly say, it's a Manchester police car. It came out of the factory in 1951, went into service with the Manchester Police Force, serviced the police force well for a number of years before it going into retirement. Probably like a lot of pilots, it had a checkered history after that, moving from one person to the next. Most were bought for a song, 5, 10, 15, 20 pounds, and were smoked about until they broke something. This one was one of those. Up until 3 years ago, it had laid idle for nearly nigh on 20 years. When the current owner purchased it, took it home and lovingly restored it to the condition it's in now.
And what are sort of the problems you incur with the car, which has obviously got a police history? How exactly did you get back into these sort of records and find out it was an original police car and a genuine car?
Yeah, it's often very difficult. Sometimes a lot of forces have still got serving officers that remember the vehicles in question, and there's always guys within organisations like that are interested in history and keeping records. in this case, it was a matter of chasing round, and eventually they found someone from their old motor pool department who actually remembered the car and said, yes, we do remember this particular vehicle. We can't give you much about its service history as to what it actually did, but it worked for the city of Manchester and served it well.
Stanley, what sort of value do you put on a vehicle like this? And is something that's been a police car or a car with a bit more history than, say, an average road car, does that actually add to the value of it or not?
Yes, it does to certain people. Obviously, it's a personal choice. Some people like military vehicles, some people like fire engines, some people like ambulances, and there are certain a section of public that like police vehicles. They do carry an interest, and I think there's always that sort of little bit of curiosity. You know, was this the car in 1951 that was behind me when I was exceeding the speed limit?
Ian, thanks for your time.
Okay.